Hi, everybody. I'm Roy Firestone, and this is my weekly show. I attended perhaps the most consequential Super Bowl in NFL history. That was the Super Bowl in Miami, Super Bowl III. The Joe Namath, we guarantee it to win that game. It was really a cool game to go because the upset was really massive. It was like Clay versus Liston. I mean, I was there with my brother, but the price of the ticket, I want you to hear this. I looked at it the other day, $12. $12 to attend one of the greatest games ever. Now, next Sunday's Super Bowl ticket prices go from kind of funny to absolutely appalling. The game's cheapest seat is listed at, ready for this, $10,000. That's kind of funny, but the best seat in the stands, $75,000. Two tickets, $100,000. To me, that's appalling. Parking, by the way, if you can get it, is $300. I mean, it's completely out of hand now. Sports, entertainment, theater. Billy Joel, floor seats in Vegas. Check this out, $3,000. I think that between the pandemics and the crowds and parking and food and traffic and all the other things, I think people are going to quit going to events. Not everybody, of course, but a lot. Like those 4 million people who quit their jobs in America. I paid $800 for one ticket to see Bruce Springsteen on Broadway. That was $1,600 for two people. I mean, I love the show, but I'm not going to do it again. And I think people are going to end up getting streaming and home sports packages and watch virtually, not as protection from the viruses necessarily, but they simply found out, like a lot of businesses found out, you can live and work well virtually. Maybe there'll always be a good crowd at events. I'm pretty sure there will be. But those people better be willing to pay a lot of money to go. And I definitely think twice before I go to any event these days, COVID or no COVID, because it's just not worth it. Anyway, other subjects. It's going to be interesting to see if former Dolphins coach Brian Flores has any physical evidence, a voicemail, a text, an email of the Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offering him $100,000 a game to deliberately lose football games. Or if Brian has any corroborating witnesses who would testify under oath that indeed that was the case. Or if, say, Tom Brady will, under oath, testify that he was brought to Flores on a yacht in a clandestine tampering act, which would be against the league rules. And if he does, Stephen Ross must step down as the Dolphins team owner. If it's true what Flores says about Ross's request deliberately losing games to pay, well, I think that's every bit as bad and maybe worse in some ways than what Donald Sterling did in Los Angeles with the Clippers. I mean, Sterling was a disgusting racist owner. He needed to go. But I do take exception at one thing, at what Flores' attorneys wrote in their legal brief. They were referencing the term plantation owners and black players in the National Football League. Well, listen, as far as I'm concerned, there is widespread systemic racism in the hiring practices in the NFL. But there's just one head coach right now in a league whose players are more than 70% black. That's really an embarrassment and a disgrace. But the term plantation owners, I mean, slaves in America were whipped and beaten and murdered by the thousands and held against their will. They were killed for merely learning to read and write. It was genocide, one of the greatest horrors in the history of this country. It's a very unfortunate comparison, I think, to say that black athletes and coaches are even remotely treated in the same way. For example, the average salary for the players in the National Football League is nearly $900,000. That's the average salary. By the way, no one is literally holding a gun to the players' heads like the plantation owners did, and often pulled the trigger too. No one's putting a gun to their head if they choose not to work on their football fields. And to be fair, nearly 40% of assistant coaches in the league are black. And in fact, the Dolphins have right now a black general manager, black team president. That's hardly any kind of holocaust, I don't think. But still, the league, which allows slogans on helmets decrying racism and some stadiums uses anti-racist phrases painted in the end zone, that same league has a very poor record for hiring black head coaches and really has for years. There shouldn't have to be a Rooney Rule that mandates interviewing minorities for the head coaching positions, but there it is. And it's clearly being ignored. I think what Brian Flores did took enormous courage and personal sacrifice. there's a good chance that he will never work again as a head coach in the National Football League, despite being young, gifted, and black. He might become the Colin Kaepernick of coaches, losing a career to a principal. That would be a terrible professional tragedy. For Flores, a personal one, too. The National Football League would love to celebrate its upcoming Super Bowl and have its fans forget about inequity and racism. It would hope that the fans would forget about an allegation of actually throwing football games for pay. But the league must address these damning allegations, and soon. These may be the most serious allegations the league has ever faced, and there's already possibly some evidence that Flores is really telling the truth. He is blowing the whistle on the National Football League, the owners. And this time the whistle doesn't mean time out. It means game on for a reckoning. Last thought, maybe someday, if he's lucky, at say, I don't know, in his 60s somewhere, Tom Brady will be able to tie his own tie or tie his shoelaces or remember his friends' names. That's if he's lucky. Tom Brady is retired at age 44. He's had multiple knee surgeries, ankle surgeries, played with a torn MCL tear, and still won a Super Bowl. He's played with broken ribs and also played with his finger ligaments nearly torn off a bone. He's been battered and bruised and knocked around for most of 30 years or more. And he won with all of those injuries. He played 112 consecutive games. I mean, that's nuts. The toll he took in the game in 22 seasons may not be as high as, say, Mike Webster, who had 4 Super Bowl rings but in the end couldn't remember his wife's name and once drank antifreeze in some twisted attempt to kill himself. He was out of his head with CTE. Or Junior Seau, who tried to drive off a cliff before he shot himself in the chest because he was enduring such deep depression linked to brain damage. Or Nick Buoniconti, who was so badly brain injured he couldn't even button his shirt without help. Listen, I admire Tom Brady's courage to play the game and his commitment to winning. 44 years old. Well, he very nearly played well enough just a few weeks ago to take his same team to the NFC title game and almost earned a shot at an 8th Super Bowl ring. Maybe someday he'll look at those rings that he did earn, and he'll look at the plaques and listen to all the accolades for the rest of his life. But if he's lucky and really lucky, he'll have a life free of hospital visits and hip replacements and artificial knees, a life clear of CAT scans and appointments with neurologists. Listen, Tom has won more titles at quarterback than anyone, and it's not even close. But if he's lucky, his greatest victory would be a life free and clear of devastating brain trauma or serious health problems. I bet he'd give up all the rings, all the trophies, and the headlines to be able to hug his grandkids and know who they are, to ride in a golf cart knowing that he can still swing the club and walk to the green without a walker. That would be his greatest gift of all. Yes, Tom was indeed Tom terrific. And now all the fans who loved him, and maybe some of the fans who didn't, should wish him good health and a life without any serious health problems that came from playing in a sport where hundreds of players also did, but couldn't claim that. Here's to you, Tom. Thanks for the memories. May you keep them forever. A lot of players weren't that fortunate. Stay well. That's our show for this week. We'll see you next week.